let's start with f of x is 2x squared plus x. And let's give you g of x to be the absolute value of x plus 3. Now, in the early days, I would just ask you to find f of 2 or g of 3. So you should be beyond that by now. We're reviewing for the test. So let's try a little more complicated one. F of g of 2. Everybody take a second and figure out what that comes out to. In this case, you will just get a number as your final answer. I'll pause for a second. We figure out f of g of 2. So just a reminder, it will make a difference if you don't do it this way. I strongly recommend doing it this way. Put an empty parenthesis here and an empty parenthesis here, and then drop in the answer from the other one. So this has an empty parenthesis right there. So the first thing you'd start with is putting 2 in here in an empty parenthesis, and then you'll get your answer. Once you got your answer for that, let's say it's 7, you're going to go stick it over here and there. You got to put it in both spots when there's 2 x's. All right, I'll pause again while we finish this one up. Okay, let's see how many people had this one right. G of 2, when you did that, was you stuck a 2 in here, and you should have got 5, and then it's the absolute value of 5, which is just 5. And then that 5 goes over here, and you end up with 5 squared first. Notice, power rules, you have to follow the rules. Powers are first. 25 times 2 is 50, plus 5 is 55. Who had 55? Awesome. Now, I'm going to give you a more complicated one. We're using these same 2 functions. Let me erase this out to just make it a little more clean. Back to the original 2 functions. What is f of g of x? That's where you make the one function eat the other function. I'll pause for a second. This kind will have variables in the answer. Okay, so the f of x function, we start with that. I'm just going to copy it here, except notice I'm putting an empty parenthesis where the variables were. Both of those x's are now empty parentheses, and it's going to eat what? It's going to eat the g function. And the g function is this, which has absolute values in it. Absolute value of x plus 3. Now, I think some people think that you can just take it out of the absolute values. You cannot. There is your final answer. You cannot take absolute values off of variables. You have to stay on there. Now, if you have absolute values on a variable like this, and it equals something like it equals 8, then you can figure out that the answers are 8 and negative 8. But unless you know what it equals, you can't take absolute values off of your variable. So your answer would be left just like that. I'll clean it up to absolute value of x plus 3 squared. And no, you cannot square that thing, because you can't get it out of the absolute values. It's like it's in jail, and you can't get it out of jail. Okay, now let's do some from a chart and a graph, because those are really important. So here's a graph, and I'm going to give you a few points. This is going to be negative 1, 1. This is going to be 3, negative 2. And this spot is going to be at 9, comma 6. I'll give you the easiest of them all, and that's just what's f of 3. This should be like a duh by now. Did I just tell you the x, or did I just tell you the y? I gave you x. I said basically x is 3. And the implied question is, so what's f of 3, which is what's the y value there? And you should have gone, oh, it's that one, so it's negative 2. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, cool. Then if I make it much more complicated, you should be able to handle it. F of n minus 8 is equal to 6. Now remember, on this kind, I suggested you set up something like this, and that would help you somehow. No more hints. Pausing for a second, you try to figure out what n must be. Okay, I'm sensing most kids are either done or don't know what to do, so we should go from here. F of what is 6? Well, look at the three choices, and obviously the one I'm referring to must be this one because it's got a 6 in it. The only one the other ones don't, so it must be that one. And if you have learned this by now, it's going to really help. This means F of 9 is 6. That's what that, I wrote it wrong. Sorry. It's 6. F of 9 is 6. That's what a point means. You take the F of the X, and it gives you the Y value. All right. So F of 9 is 6. So then you look at this, and you say, what n value would work? Like if I stick in 1, would it make it equal 9? No, it wouldn't. So it must be, well, n minus 8 needs to be 9. Add 8 to both. N must be 17. Who had 17? Okay, awesome. And let's see if there's anything else I should do to prepare you for this. Oh. When I have an equation like we had in the first place, you remember this one, f of x was 2x squared plus x. What if I say, what's f of a plus 1? Let's practice that. See if you know what to do on that. So this is the x value. They told you x is a plus 1. So you put it there and there. So my answer would be 2 empty parentheses squared plus empty parentheses. That's just me copying this down. And then I stick in a plus 1. Now the tragic thing here is either when kids just leave it that way, you have to simplify it, which means you have to multiply it all out and simplify it all the way. Or when they make this dumb little like oops, which is, this is just a squared plus 1. No, it's not. A plus 1 squared really means that. So you got to start with that, which is not a squared plus 1. It's a squared plus 1a plus 1a, which is 2a, plus 1 times 1 is 1. Then it can be times by the 2. How come why can't you start with the 2? Well, because this was a power, and you should really do powers first, so I'm doing that power, which is that, first. Now, it is true, if you multiplied the 2 out and only did it to one of the parentheses and then FOILed it out, it would work, but that's way harder. Don't start by multiplying the 2 in. And final answer, 2a squared plus 4a plus 2 plus a plus 1. You just took it out of the parentheses. Yeah, I can do that. If there's nothing being multiplied and there's nothing I can do in the parentheses, then the parentheses can be dropped. Those go together. These go together. Final answer, 2a squared plus 5a plus 3. Who made it all the way to the end on that one? Sweet. All right, I feel like you are ready. So what we do, in case you're homesick today or whatever, I'm going to put the functions practice test there that you can do for practice, and then I'm going to post the key, and you can compare it to that. Kids in class are going to take it, keep it at your desk. Please don't walk up and hand it in, because you're going to grade your own. I'm going to put the key up, and I'll tell you what you would have gotten for a score. I'll tell you how we would have graded it, and you can kind of give yourself, here's what I would have had for the test score. That way you can see how the R2s and R3s work. But then this is all just for practice. This is not going in the grade book for today. That's all I have for the video for today. The real test is tomorrow.